People living in Philadelphia are waiting more than a decade for public or subsidized housing, and that's if they were lucky enough to get on the wait list years ago. But the NBC10 investigators found Philadelphians avoiding the wait by moving away and then coming right back to the city in as little as a few months.
Investigative reporter Claudia Vargas digs deeper into a federal loophole that is allowing people to skip one of Philly's most unattainable housing wait lists.
They told me it would be up to 8 to 15 years.
That's how long Leticia Riley says the Philadelphia Housing Authority told her it would be before she can get into a public housing unit. And forget about getting a housing choice voucher, also known as Section 8.
Our housing choice voucher program is currently closed.
Section 8 homes are privately owned with the Housing Authority paying the rent. The wait list for those has been closed since 2010. But the NBC10 investigators found that since 2017, 715 families have been able to get Section 8 housing in Philly using a loophole. It's a federal program called Portability. The program allows people to transfer their housing voucher from one public housing agency to another, anywhere in the country. To help explain it, we have to take you to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, an old steel town just east of Pittsburgh. That's where we meet Zenzi Wallace Bay. She says she first tried getting into public housing in Philly, where she's from.
I was on the waiting list for almost like 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was taking very long. Whereas here, I was on there for only 2 months.
Once she became a Johnstown resident in the city's public housing, she got priority for a Section 8 voucher.
To get housing in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia is much more populated, has a much longer wait list.
Mike Alberts is the head of the Johnstown Housing Authority. He says the Johnstown agency doesn't have a residency requirement for public housing, so people from Philly and other cities can get in. Some Philly residents will move into Johnstown public housing, but with another goal in mind.
Once they've established residency, then they qualify for that preference to get a Section 8 voucher quicker.
The wait for a housing voucher in Cambria County is usually a couple of months. So they come here to Johnstown in western Pennsylvania, stay for as little as a few months, pick up their Section 8 voucher, and then they port back to Philly and move into Section 8 housing without having to wait on PHA's list. The practice is allowed under the Federal Housing Choice Voucher Program. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development sets the rules for the transfer. Officials there say it gives people a choice of where to live.
That's how it works, and there's nothing that we can do to change that.
715 people used the program to get into Philly between 2017 and 2021. And 95 of those are from Johnstown, the most of any town or city. They got to skip that line.
Right. And part of that, I think, is on Philadelphia, where they're absorbing these residents into the program instead of pulling from their own waiting list.
Philly's housing authority could build the other housing authority where a voucher holder moved from in order to cover that person's rent. Or PHA can absorb it, paying for it from its own budget.
Those 715 vouchers have not been absorbed, nor will they be.
PHA Director Kelvin Jeremiah said his agency would not pay for the vouchers coming in from other jurisdictions because of his agency's long wait list.
They're saying the opposite, that you guys are absorbing them.
Absolutely not. So if we had, I'm assuming you're referring to the portability data.
That is what we're referring to. Data obtained through a public records request shows PHA is paying $10.4 million in rent annually for the families who transferred their vouchers to Philly between 2017 and 2021. After our interview with Jeremiah, a PHA spokesperson confirmed in an email that the agency has been paying for the transferred vouchers, including 58 new vouchers so far in 2022.
Bye-bye.
Leticia Riley says she may just put in a housing application in Johnstown.
I kind of don't want to travel that far, but it's seeming like I'm going to have to because I can't wait 8 to 15 years to get a place.
For the investigators, Claudia Vargas, NBC 10 News.
Moving from Philadelphia to paradise on the government's dime. The NBC 10 investigators are digging deeper into a federal housing program that made that move possible.
Investigative reporter Claudia Vargas found.
With stacks of boxes packed up, Tamikai Palmer said goodbye to her home for the last decade, West Park Apartments in West Philly.
I've accepted that change is coming.
The public housing complex is planned for redevelopment, and the 200-plus tenants had to be relocated.
Many of them moved to other PHA sites.
The head of the Housing Authority, Calvin Jeremiah, says a few dozen residents like Tamika took the option instead of getting a voucher for the housing choice program known as Section 8. That voucher allows a person to find their own place to rent at a government-subsidized rate. They
can do so anywhere in the continental United States, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands.
Philly's Section 8 waitlist, however, has not taken any new applicants since 2010. PHA made an exception for the West Park residents since they were being displaced by the agency. Tamika took the offer, landing in Hawaii in late June.
Welcome to my humble abode.
Moving from one city to another using a housing voucher is called porting. The NBC 10 investigators found that porting allows people to bypass waitlists in other cities they move to. For example, at the time Tamika moved to Honolulu, the public housing agency had more than 900 people on its wait list for Section 8.
It can be years, and that's problematic.
Anton Krucke is the director of the Honolulu Department of Community Services, which manages the housing voucher program. He says if someone like Tamika ports in with a voucher already in hand, there's no wait.
So they're already qualified with that voucher. We may have to put it in our budget, or we may have that public housing authority do it from their end.
In Tamika's case, Philly Housing Authority records show Honolulu took over her rent payments.
Hawaii has absorbed the total cost of the rent and the utilities. Amen.
That's $2,000 a month, she says. By Honolulu paying her rent, they're choosing to pay for her voucher instead of taking someone off their wait list. And for Philly, it means they have one more voucher to give someone on its 2,100-person-long wait list.
You see, every housing agency throughout the country gets a certain number of vouchers, and when one family moves from one city to another, the question is, who pays for that voucher? Decision can have unintended consequences for people on Section 8 wait lists.
According to records obtained through a public records request, Philly's Housing Authority is paying more than $1 million annually for 78 families to live outside of the city, including Florida, Ohio, and California.
It's something that the program frankly encourages. We want families to decide where they want to live.
If the housing authorities and other locations were to pick up the tab like Honolulu did, then Philly could move 78 other families off its wait list.
Every one of our vouchers, there is a huge demand.
For most of the 450 people who have ported out of Philly since 2017, the receiving agency has picked up the tab.
It's very beautiful.
Tamika moved into a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. It includes a mountain view, and it's close to the ocean.
Very quiet, subtle, and full of wildlife, full of birds that are just foreign, that I've never heard.
For the investigators, Claudia Vargas, NBC.